What's going on, fantasy football fans? I'm your host, Hussein the Brain, and you're watching The Couch. It's week 14 of fantasy football. This past week in the NFL, the 49ers offense put up a terrible performance, and Colin Kaepernick gave away the Thanksgiving turkey to Richard Sherman. Drew Brees threw for 5 touchdowns, and Jimmy Graham saw 0 balls thrown his way. And the Raiders lost in an epic fashion, 52-0 to the St. Louis Rams. The Rams putting up the best defensive performance in fantasy all season. For this video, I'm going to go over the Twitter question of the week, go over the waivers, and at the end of the video, I have a question for you. In last week's video, I went over some of the strategies that I use to help me decide which players to start. I also revealed which statistics directly correlate the most to fantasy points. In case you missed it, make sure you check out the previous video. Now let's go to Twitter land and see what questions we have this week. If you want your week 15 or rest of the season question answered on the next video, make sure you use the hashtag AskTheBrain. This week we have 6 questions. The Disciple 2011 asks, pick one, Terrence Williams, Marquise Lee, or Charles Johnson from the Minnesota Vikings. PPR League. Marquise Lee has a great matchup against the Houston Texans, but there's too many factors for me to recommend him to you. We don't know if Blake Bortles will have a good game or a terrible game. We don't know which Denard Robinson will show up. Will he have a good game like he has in the past, or will he have a terrible performance like he has the past 2 weeks? So he's ranked number 3. Then Terrence Williams, I rank number 2 because he's really not that good in fantasy. If he doesn't get a touchdown, he basically has no value. He's got 5 receptions the past 4 games. That's not good. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend Charles Johnson to you. He didn't have a great week in week 14, but that's because the Vikings didn't really have to do much. They scored 2 touchdowns off blocked punts. Go ahead and start Charles Johnson against the Jets. Next question. Joe asks, hashtag AskTheBrain, who to start at flex, Kelvin Benjamin or Dan Herron? This is a close one right here, and Dan Herron's a great start for this week at flex. I recommended him last week to some people. I even started him myself. But I'm going to go with Kelvin Benjamin. This is the game to start him right here. Going against the Saints in a dome, it's just the ideal matchup. Whether Cam Newton has a good game or not, he's bound to throw a few passes to Kelvin Benjamin, and he should be able to pull some down. So I'm going with the upside here. Start Kelvin Benjamin. Our next question. Easy Money asks, should I start Delaney, Donnell, or pick up Jordan Reed? There's not a huge difference between these 3 guys, and the tight end is the most inconsistent position. With Justin Hunter out, I'm going to go ahead and go with Delaney Walker. That's who I'd start this week. G. Valdez asks, thoughts on Frank Gore this week versus Oakland? Hashtag AskTheBrain. If you have Frank Gore, you're going to likely start him this week. He's a great flex play, but he does have a low ceiling. 100 yards and a touchdown is likely his max, his ceiling right there. And you don't really know what's going to happen this game. I do see the Niners offense getting back on track, having a good game, but we don't know who's going to score here. They may use a heavy dose of Carlos Hyde this game. Michael asks, rank first to worst, Shady McCoy, Joique Bell, and Rashad Jennings. I rank these 3 running backs for week 14. Number 1, I definitely got Rashad Jennings. Number 2, I have Joique Bell if Reggie Bush doesn't play. Now, if Reggie Bush does play, I got Joique Bell at number 3 and LaShawn McCoy at number 2. And Team Savages asks, PPR League, who to start? Brandon Marshall versus Dallas or Brandon LaFell versus San Diego? Now, there's a lot of factors with this Patriots offense. Great offense, but we don't know if Gronk's going to score 2 touchdowns, if some random running back's going to score 2 touchdowns. You know, all I do know is that LaFell is the better receiver when it comes to the deep ball, when it comes to touchdowns, the better wide receiver that is. And Julian Edelman is better in the short routes. He gets more targets. So it's really hard to predict what's going on with the Patriots. All I know is that their offense is good. They're a really good team. I'm going to go with Brandon Marshall here. So I think Brandon Marshall, he usually puts up good games whether the Bears are performing good or bad. So my answer is Brandon Marshall, and that's who I'd start for week 14. And that's it for Twitter. Let's go to the waivers. Let's focus more on the new waivers that I have and the names that I haven't beaten to the ground in the previous videos. Ryan Fitzpatrick is my number 1 QB to pick up. They're going against the Jaguars, and the Jaguars are going to be focused a lot on stopping the run. And while that's happening, Ryan Fitzpatrick should be able to get at least 2 touchdowns. Kyle Orton should air it out against the Broncos, but keep tabs on that Sammy Watkins injury. And Jonny Manziel, I think there's a 49% chance he's going to be the starter because I think the Browns should go with Hoyer. That's a tough call there, but if he is the starter, he is a good pickup. Sean Hill going against Washington. He won't put up any stats that will wow you, but he's worth considering in deeper leagues. And Blake Bortles, a sneaky pickup if you're in a dual QB league. If you need a running back, make sure you keep tabs on the Jamal Charles injury. Doesn't seem to be major, but, you know, like I told you before, Nile Davis, a must pickup if you do have Jamal Charles. Carlos Hyde is a great sneaky start this week if you're really hurting at the running back position. Doug Martin is a good stash. Would not start him against that Lions defense, though. If you're in a deep league that's a PPR format, Dexter McCluster is a good add. And the same goes for Charles Sims. Jonathan Stewart, a guy who's not a big name. He may slip under the radars. He's a good pickup this week against the Saints. And make sure you keep tabs on that D'Angelo Williams injury. That'll affect his snap count. Anthony Dixon, he's not a good start this week at all. I would not recommend starting him. But, you know, he's a good speculative add. Same thing with Andre Williams. You know, you want to add him. Keep tabs on that Rashad Jennings injury. And if you do own Rashad Jennings in a deep league, he may be worth a pickup for handcuff purposes. And we have a huge mess in Arizona. You know, you can't really trust any Arizona running back other than Ellington, who's injured. But, you know, if I had to go with one, it would be between Grice and Taylor. And the guys moving up in the wide receiver food chain are Charles Johnson, Doug Baldwin has a good matchup against the Eagles, Stedman Bailey, Devontae Adams, not a guy I'd start this week, but a good add in PPR formats, a good add in deep leagues. And if you're in a deep league, here are some more pickups. Make sure you keep tabs on the Roddy White injury, Larry Fitzgerald injury. Again, Justin Hunter is on IR. And keep tabs on Deshaun Jackson's injury. And going on to the tight end position, Coby Fleener analysis. I'm going to keep it real simple. When Dwayne Allen is healthy, Coby Fleener is middle of the pack. He's a good tight end, decent tight end, not a great tight end. When Dwayne Allen is out, Coby Fleener is maybe a top 5 tight end. Simple as that. With Colt McCoy, I think he'll go to Jordan Reed a lot, so he's definitely a good add. For people having tight end issues, I see Heath Miller having a great game this week, and Kyle Rudolph, he's more of a TD or bust, so I really wouldn't pick him up, you know, unless you're really desperate for a tight end, but you could do a lot worse. I see people starting a lot worse tight ends than Rudolph. And if you're really hurting, look to pick up a Philadelphia Eagles tight end. The Seahawks don't guard the tight end position that well. I mean, compared to other positions, their defense is really on point the past couple weeks. And here are my top 8 defense/special team adds for week 14. Last week, I told everyone to start the Rams defense. Nice. This week, there's no surprise here. You guys know it. I know it. Number 1 defense to pick up is the Texans defense going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. As long as J.J. Watt is healthy and playing in this game, some things can happen. The 49ers basically need to win out the rest of the season, so they're not going to go easy on the Raiders. I see them being pumped up, and that's a good defense to have. The Lions going up against the Bucks. Woo-hoo-hoo, man. You should be excited if you have the Lions started this week. Some things can happen there for sure. And the Rams have been on fire lately. They're a good start against Washington, especially if your league rewards points for sacks, and just about every league does. The Cardinals have suffered an injury to just about every single position, and the Chiefs are a great start. The Vikings are a solid defense, and they're going up against the Jets. You know, the Jets are not necessarily a high-octane offense, and if they do decide to throw, they're prone to mistakes. The Packers at home, you gotta like that going up against Matt Ryan and that shaky offensive line. And a defense that I'm not overly confident in, but I do like, is the Steelers going up against the Bengals. They might be your best bet on waivers, especially if you're in a deep league. If you need to add a kicker this week, I got Connor Barth, number 1. I think he's going to be pretty good the rest of the season. Graham Gano, just for this week, he's really good. Shane Graham, of course, on the Saints. And a guy that you need to drop this week is Cordarrelle Patterson. Now, you probably dropped him last week or even before that. But if you didn't, you need to drop him now. You know, he might have that fluke game where he goes off, but that's so unlikely. And, you know, don't hate me if he does, because let's be real here. If he does have a fluke game where he goes off, you would have likely benched him anyway. So go ahead and drop him. Pick somebody up. Pick anybody up. Pick up somebody that your opponent may pick up. You know, that's a good strategy right there. If your opponent needs a quarterback, pick up the best quarterback on waivers. Or maybe a defense. Your Your opponent doesn't have a good defense, pick up the best defense off waivers. Just about anything's better than having Patterson. Okay, enough talk about Cordarrelle Patterson. I have a question for you. It's December, and the Cowboys are playing the Bears. How many turnovers will Tony Romo throw in Week 14? Leave your answer below in the YouTube comments, and I'll let you know what I think. And that's all the time we have for this video. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and check out fantasycouch.com. We have a fantasy basketball podcast that you gotta check out. I'll see you guys on the next video.